The Syrian interim president calls for unity and collective effort to rebuild the nation at the National Dialogue Conference. The Egyptian president stresses Gaza recovery, Palestinian rights and support for statehood. And Lebanon's Prime Minister affirms commitment to reforms, security and Palestinian rights. It's 4 p.m. Cairo local time and you're now watching Q News. I'm Hani Sif and we begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Syria. Syrian interim president Ahmed al-Shara has stressed that Syrians must unite to safeguard the country's achievements and face challenges with resilience. In his speech at the National Dialogue Conference, al-Shara reflected on Syria's painful past, urging citizens to embrace their country's suffering while striving for its recovery. Al-Shara emphasized the nation's struggles and the need for unity. He called for collective efforts to rebuild Syria, ensuring security, unity, and a prosperous future. Syria's interim foreign minister Asad al-Shaybani has emphasized the country's resilience in facing external pressures while maintaining a balanced foreign policy. At the National Dialogue Conference, he highlighted Syria's efforts to strengthen economic cooperation with allied nations and reaffirmed commitment to diplomatic work with those valuing dialogue. Al-Shaybani stressed Syria's belief in regional collaboration and the importance of internal stability for broader security while opposing illegal sanctions imposed on the country. The Syrian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has welcomed the European Union's recent decision to suspend several restrictive measures imposed on Syria. The ministry stated that this step marks a positive development in alleviating the economic hardships endured by the Syrian people and signals progress towards constructive engagement between Syria and the international community. It further emphasized that this is an initial step towards broader dialogue and called on all international partners to take additional measures to fully lift the remaining sanctions that continue to hinder Syria's recovery. Jordan's news agency has reported that King Abdullah II of Jordan will meet with Syria's interim president Ahmed al-Shara on February 26th. Earlier, King Abdullah II congratulated al-Shara on assuming leadership and reaffirmed Jordan's support for Syria's unity, security and stability. He emphasized the importance of strengthening cooperation, supporting Syrians in rebuilding their country, and maintaining coordination to advance shared interests and promote Arab unity. And from Syria, we now move to Gaza. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has emphasized the necessity of initiating early recovery and rebuilding efforts in Gaza while ensuring that Palestinian residents are not displaced, firmly rejecting any proposals to expel them. This occurred during President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's meeting with Ammar al-Hakim, the leader of Iraq's National Wisdom Movement, and his accompanying delegation. During the meeting, they discussed the importance of implementing the Gaza ceasefire agreement, including detainee exchanges and the provision of humanitarian aid. Both sides reiterated their firm rejection of efforts to undermine the Palestinian cause and emphasized the necessity of establishing a Palestinian state based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Tunisia has called for holding Israeli officials accountable on charges of genocide and abuse of Palestinians. Tunisian Foreign Minister Mohamed Ali Nafti reiterated his country's support for the recent ceasefire agreement in Gaza. He added that while Tunisia commends the International Criminal Court's stance on the war crimes committed by Israel, it firmly renews its rejection of the displacement of Palestinians and emphasizes the Palestinian people's right to reclaim their rights. Three children have died due to the severe cold in the Gaza Strip, while the condition of others remain critical. The people of the Gaza Strip are suffering from a lack of shelter and medical treatment due to the occupation's aggression, as well as a shortage of heating methods caused by the scarcity of fuel, all amidst a severe polar cold wave. The director of the medical relief in Gaza, Mohammed Abu Afash, has stated that 35,000 families in the Gaza Strip are still suffering due to a severe shortage of basic supplies. Abu Afash pointed out that the suffering of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip is worsening with the severity of cold waves, heavy rains, and the severe shortage of basic supplies. He added that the Gaza Strip needs 60,000 caravans and 200,000 tents to provide relief to citizens, and he appealed to international institutions to pressure the occupation to allow the entry of aid. The World Food Programme has announced that the ceasefire in Gaza has allowed it to bring in more than double the monthly average of food it delivered prior to the ceasefire being in place. The agency successfully provided full food rations, restocked and reopened bakeries, and reached families throughout the Gaza Strip. Over 60 kitchens have distributed nearly 10 million meals, while 25 bakeries are now producing 150,000 bread bundles daily, 5 times more than before the ceasefire. Additionally, the World Food Programme has pre-positioned over 70,000 tons of food, enough to feed more than 1 million people for approximately 3 months, with supplies expected to arrive through the corridors. Leader of the Israeli Democrats, Yair Golan, has accused Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of abandoning detainees in Gaza in order to cling to power. Golan warned that Israel is facing its gravest existential crisis, driven by internal fractures rather than external threats. He claimed that Netanyahu fears releasing the detainees could destabilize his coalition. Furthermore, he asserted that Hamas continues to exist because of Netanyahu, who in turn sustains his political rule through its survival. Jordan's King Abdullah II has warned of escalating tensions in the occupied West Bank and emphasized the importance of supporting a two-state solution. In a call with U.S. Congressman Brian Mast, he emphasized the importance of rebuilding Gaza without displacing its residents and urged the continuation of a sustained ceasefire alongside increased humanitarian aid. The discussion also included strengthening U.S.-Jordanian strategic ties. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has urged Israel to uphold international humanitarian law. Kallas emphasized the EU's deep concern over the situation in the occupied West Bank. She also stressed on the importance of ensuring Palestinians living safely in Gaza.
Of the transatlantic relationship. It is clear that we have had differences before, but we have always...
The Israeli occupation has continued its aggression on the city of Jenin and its camp for the 36th consecutive day, resulting in the deaths of 27 Palestinians and leaving dozens injured. The Israeli occupation forces withdrew from Qabatiyya after a 48-hour raid that caused extensive destruction, including damage to infrastructure, shops, water and electricity networks, and homes. 2 people were injured and several were detained during the operation. In Jenin, 20,000 people have been displaced, over 430 homes destroyed, and 2,000 students are unable to attend school. The Israeli aggression on the city of Tulkarm and its camp has entered its first month, and on the Nur Shems camp its 17th day. Since the beginning of the aggression, the occupation forces have imposed a tight siege on the Tulkarm and Nur Shems camps, accompanied by extensive raids on the city and the blockade of its hospitals. The aggression has also caused significant destruction to infrastructure, including electricity, water, sewage and communication networks. The head of the Popular Committee for Tulkarm Camp Services, Faisal Salama, has reported that Israeli forces destroyed at least 40 residential buildings, including 100 apartments, burned 10 homes and damaged 300 shops. Salama explained that Israeli forces paved a road through 4 neighborhoods in Tulkarm camp, demolishing 26 buildings and severely damaging surrounding structures. Over 12,000 residents were forcibly displaced, while education was suspended for 2,000 students and health services were halted. Salama noted that the occupation aims to weaken the refugee issue, destroy the camp's symbolism, and reduce its population by erasing its architectural and demographic identity. Israeli forces have stormed the Imam Ali Mosque on Al-Mamoun Street in the city of Nablus. The Israeli forces blew off its doors and confiscated surveillance camera footage. And the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has stressed the need for international collaboration and expressed concern about the escalating tensions in Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon's sovereignty violations. Speaking from Tehran, Lavrov emphasized ongoing coordination with Iran on various international issues. He pointed to joint Russian-Iranian initiatives to address regional crises and resolve challenges posed by Western sanctions. Lavrov also discussed the Iranian nuclear program with Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister and highlighted bilateral economic cooperation and efforts to boost trade. Israel's escalating military operations in the West Bank intensify tensions, fueling international condemnation.
The West Bank is currently witnessing an unprecedented escalation in Israeli military operations, with recent attacks such as those in Tulkarm that resulted in the deaths of 2 Palestinian children, heightening the gravity of the situation. This escalation, particularly in areas like Nablus, Tulkarm, and Al-Khalil, reflects Israel's broader strategy of exerting control over the region through military pressure, settlement expansion, and the continued suppression of Palestinian resistance. At the core of Israel's actions is the policy of territorial Judaization, which seeks to alter the demographic makeup of the region by encouraging Israeli settlements, confiscating Palestinian land, and displacing local populations. The ongoing military operations, including raids into refugee camps, further aim to dismantle Palestinian Authority structures and prevent any meaningful political reconciliation, thus weakening the Palestinian cause. The consequences of these actions are profound. They deepen divisions between Palestinians and Israelis, generating widespread resentment. This relentless aggression undermines hopes for peace, escalating tensions and increasing calls for Palestinian unity in the face of Israeli occupation. The continued targeting of civilians and infrastructure exacerbates the sense of insecurity and injustice within Palestinian communities. International reactions to Israel's actions have been largely rhetorical, with the United Nations expressing concern but taking no substantial action. Many states, while voicing disapproval, have shown limited practical response. As Israel pursues its territorial objectives, the future of Palestine's sovereignty remains at risk, with the international community's inaction contributing to further instability. The Palestinian cause faces a critical juncture.
And now we move on to the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين. وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam has affirmed the government's commitment to protecting citizens' rights, security and freedoms. In his speech to the Lebanese parliament, Prime Minister Nawaf Salam emphasized the government's commitment to rebuilding Lebanon in the aftermath of recent attacks, focusing on reform, the rule of law and national sovereignty. He highlighted efforts to ensure electoral transparency, restructure the public sector and strengthen judicial independence. Salam also announced ongoing negotiations with the International Monetary Fund to address Lebanon's financial crisis and reaffirmed the government's firm stance against the permanent settlement of Palestinian refugees, advocating instead for their right to return. Lebanese Foreign Minister Youssef Raghi has called for an end to Israeli airstrikes and border violations, urging adherence to the cessation of hostilities and UN Resolution 1701. He discussed Lebanon's regional challenges with French Ambassador Hervé Magro and reviewed the outcomes of the Paris Ministerial Conference on Syria. Raghi also met with Vatican envoy Paolo Borghia, addressing southern Lebanon's situation and extending well wishes for Pope Francis for a swift recovery. Moving on to Cairo, where Egypt's Senate head Abdelwahab Abdelrezzaq has reaffirmed Libya's security as integral to Egypt's national security during a meeting with Libya's High Council of State delegation. Both sides emphasized strengthening parliamentary ties, Libya's stability and Arab unity. The Libyan delegation praised Egypt's leadership under President Sisi and expressed unwavering support for Palestine's cause, while rejecting attempts to undermine it. And now we move to the latest developments in Germany.
Transaktional.
Widerstand. Die Parteien.
Die Amerikaner. Zusammenarbeit.
Das Wirtschaftswachstum. Wir wollen.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has congratulated Friedrich Merz and the CDU-CSU alliance on their victory in Germany's federal elections. In a social media statement, President al-Sisi wished Merz success in fulfilling Germans' aspirations and emphasized strengthening Egyptian-German strategic ties. He also stressed joint coordination to promote regional peace and stability during this critical period. France is considering deploying nuclear-armed fighter jets in Germany to strengthen European security as the U.S. threatens troop withdrawals. This follows German Chancellor-elect Friedrich Merz's call for Britain and France to expand their nuclear protection. French President Emmanuel Macron, ahead of talks with U.S. President Donald Trump, emphasized Europe's need for strategic autonomy. Meanwhile, Trump suggested European forces could enter Ukraine as peacekeepers, while negotiations over rare minerals with Zelensky were reportedly nearing completion. Now moving on to the Russia and Ukrainian conflict, where the United Nations Security Council has adopted a U.S.-drafted resolution that takes a neutral position on the conflict as U.S. President Donald Trump seeks to broker peace. Until now, the 15-member council has been unable to take any action on the conflict in Ukraine because Russia is a veto power. The U.S. resolution received 10 votes in favor, while France, Britain, Denmark, Greece and Slovenia abstained. The short resolution reiterates the UN's purpose is to maintain international peace and security and peacefully settle disputes, and urges a swift end to the conflict and a lasting peace. A U.S. State Department official has stated that the U.S. will veto any amendments to its proposed UN Security Council resolution on Ukraine's conflict anniversary. He emphasized the Trump administration's focus on negotiations, despite criticism for omitting Ukraine's sovereignty. The U.S. plans to veto both Russian and European amendments if presented at the Security Council. U.S. President Donald Trump has stated he has no objection to European peacekeeping forces in Ukraine, adding that Russian President Vladimir Putin would likely accept their deployment. Speaking alongside French President Emmanuel Macron, Trump revealed a nearing mineral deal with Ukraine and asserted that the conflict could end within weeks. He also mentioned a possible visit by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to the White House soon.
It's a horrible thing that's happening. Thousands of people are dying a week. This very day is the 3rd anniversary of the...
These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of today's main stories. The Syrian interim president calls for unity and collective effort to rebuild the nation at the National Dialogue Conference. The Egyptian president stresses Gaza recovery, Palestinian rights, and support for statehood. And Lebanon's prime minister affirms commitment to reforms, security, and Palestinian rights. This concludes our news bulletin for this hour, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at Qnews EGY to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.